Okay, guys, apologize for the transition there. We were having some choppiness with the audio and video on Dave's phone. Plus, we wanted to get visual from the first video. If you noticed, you could see Dave, but now in
Be
the
careful
second
what you
video,
ask for.
exactly. Probably some people are like, keep it the other way. But in any case, we had gone through all his equipment on the little virtual tour on his phone. Thought we'd wrap up this second video with, him sitting down and going over some just general points of let's start with, what do you have as a recommendation for new people? I'm sure a lot of new people are looking at this and saying, wow, this is out of my budget range, or no way I can do this. You're not really one of the big budget guys. I'll let you talk a little bit more, on that.
Yeah, that's true. I know it looks like I am. It looks like, this room, these speakers, but I have, over these years, I bought a lot of equipment used. I'm not afraid to buy secondhand equipment. The amplifiers we looked at, the Amzillas, those came from a friend who had them before I did. The Odysseys, those are also secondhand. I bought from someone. Some things are new, like, my turntable, cartridge, preamp was new. All the SOTM gear, that all came from the same person, a friend of mine. We each enjoy this hobby in different ways. For some people, like my friend, it wasn't so much about getting from here to there. It was about the journey between the two. He enjoyed the search for the ultimate something. He didn't even know what it was, but he knew he wanted to search for it. So he enjoyed getting all kinds of gear in and out of his house. I mean, weekly. He'd be on AudioGun, he'd get this, and then he'd send things back, he'd get more things in, and I reaped all those benefits. When they were at his house, I was able to bring them over, listen, see what I liked, and when he was ready to let them go, often I would buy them instead from him, instead of, having to resell them. And so, there are ways to do this. There are ways to do this. When I had my Infinity RS1Bs, those were secondhand speakers and everything. I mean, these were new. I did buy this system new, but it's not about the money. It really isn't.
No, I think that's a lot of things that you and I share. Number one, we like the dipole big speakers, the ASC tube traps, both fans of those. Even though we don't share identical gear, or I don't have an analog, there's a lot of things we see eye to eye on, and liking the journey and putting a lot into the room and maximizing for the cost. Because I think in my case, I started off on a super beer budget, and had to always try to get the highest level I could at the lowest cost. And so I've always enjoyed trying to achieve that. And it looks like you've done that to an extreme level with your being very frugal, yet creating what would be world-class in anybody's mind. I think the important thing to notice is every piece of gear you see in that room, or any of my other friends that I feature that have $100,000 systems, if we throw this gear in the wrong room, they're all going to sound bad.
That's right.
And so the biggest takeaway from, I think, this video interview is that putting the room as a priority pays much bigger dividends than the name brands on the gear or the price that you pay for the gear.
Oh, that's right. I mean, you can go, there are some wonderful speakers out there under $1,000. Some smaller mini monitors and things, and those set up properly are incredible. Mm-hmm. If you have the right space for them that works, it's not about money. It really isn't. You can get one hell of a good sounding system.
And room correction, room treatments, modding the speakers. I've had a video on how I've modded my speakers with resonance control and stuff like that. You can make $1,000 speaker, or in my case, a couple $1,000 speakers, sound much more impressive than their price tag. So absolutely, we don't want to scare anybody with this video. Hey, this is just another rich audiophile with a $1 room I'll never have. This is doable, if you plan wisely and save and follow advice. And that's what I wanted to share with anybody watching, is feel free to post any questions or comments on the video, and we'll be happy to kind of help you along if you have questions or the jargon we're talking about isn't something you are familiar with. I know that we've helped a lot of people along the way, and we've been helped along the way, depending on where we are.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's a good point, though. Are there anybody that has been inspirational to you or you've learned the most from over the years in the industry?
Boy, I tell you what, yes. Again, these speakers were designed, this is the MPS, Brian Cheney. I had a chance to get to know Brian Cheney, as well as James Bongiorno years ago. I used to go to Vegas for the show. It was the high-end part of CES, which was, and I used to help with room setup. I used to help Brian set systems up for demonstration. I worked with James, Bongiorno as well, doing the same, because they would room together. They would share their equipment in rooms together. And it was an incredible experience working with people of that caliber. Just to sit like at lunch or to supper and hear them talk about audio, and trying to sit there and try to think of an intelligent question to ask, just so it would seem like you're part of what's going on,
Right.
that
they would respect you for your knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Because, and I've noticed this over the years, there are so many people that do the rooms, and you can just see the manufacturers roll their eyes at some of the questions that they're asked, and you really kind of feel for them in one sense, but in another sense, we've all been there where we didn't know what we know now, and there's only one way to do it, through experience.
That's right. And I think a lot of us feel that way. If we could go back to an earlier time, that's kind of the dream, is to go back to, but the key is you want to go back with what you know now.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to go back and relive all your mistakes again. No one wants to do that. But if you can go back with what we've learned and the systems we used to own, what we could have done with them with what we know now.
Right.
And how many things we let go because, hey, this doesn't work right. This doesn't sound right. Well, it probably did. It's just myself speaking for myself. I didn't know how to make it sound right.
Right.
I didn't know enough about room acoustics. I didn't know that what it would take. I didn't have
6 months ago, I was about to throw this my back room away. I just was never getting the performance level that I wanted. But turn it around, and then even Doug just recently came and realized, putting that patience in. I think you made a suggestion. I don't know if we cut it from the last video, but that patience is a real important part of the journey.
It really is, because it is a frustrating hobby, because you can do everything to the number. You could follow the math. You could follow a particular article that tells you step by step how you should be doing something. And the end result, may not get what you're supposed to get. And the puzzle is trying to figure out, why is that? So there's always a reason there, but getting to why? It's a lot of trial and error. And I don't think there's any way to get around it, because someone can tell you what it is you need to do, and you could do it exactly like they tell you, but it could still not work out because your variables might be just a little bit different.
Right. It's very rewarding when you eventually do find the causes and something can translate to making an improvement. And that's kind of part of the reason why I did this channel. I mean, we share some ideas informally among our group and when we meet and such, but there's a lot of value I think we're giving to people that are newer in the hobby through the video channel, making this public now, that they can leverage some of the experience we have and not make the same mistakes that have cost us time and money over the years. So,
sure,
definitely appreciate
reinventing the wheel.
Yeah. So definitely, your perspective and your thoughts and philosophy are going to resonate with a lot of people. And if they weren't familiar with you and some of your philosophies, maybe they will be now. So definitely want to thank you for that. Is there anything else you wanted to wrap up or share?
I can't think of anything right now. Again, like I know you had mentioned earlier that you hadn't had a chance ever to stop by. And of course you have that invitation as well as anyone, I mean, we're a small group, and it's something we like to share. It's really a very selfish hobby when you think about it, because we have our listening chair. This entire room, this entire space is built around one chair,
Right.
you know, and it's rare that we can, you know, we're always on our own listening, you know. When I have someone over, I get out of the chair and they sit, and that's the way it needs to be. But the more often we do that, the more people, you learn from them, they learn from you.
No, and I think that's a good point as well. Kind of subliminally, what's going on here, the message to take away is that it's good to get a small group. We're not a formal group. We don't have an organization or anything, but just like-minded audiophiles. And we don't even have the same type systems, although Dave and I have some things that we synonymous with. Doug and I have other things. You know, I had an interview with Chris, a little bit totally opposite in some ways. It's totally the same in others. But it's important to get a group where it's not keeping up with the Joneses, or it's not an issue of showing off. It's more of a learning with each other. And when you get that good group together where that's the common theme, it makes the hobby so much more enjoyable, and you learn so much more because everybody's sharing, not just brand names and XYZ Mark II, Mark III that they bought because that's the hot thing. It's like legitimate advice that's helpful and tangible and translatable to almost anything.
When we're home listening to our own systems, you know, generally we're listening for specific things or sometimes just an overall perspective, but we have a way that we listen. And when someone new comes over and they listen to your system, they don't know to listen the way you listen. They listen the way they listen. And so many times someone points something out to me that I hadn't noticed before, you know, I mean, on the positive and also on something I could maybe correct or make a little bit better. And it's something I just did not notice because my focus wasn't in that direction.
Right.
And having someone else over, their opinions, it's everything.
Well, be careful if you have Peppy over, because then you have to replace the plaster on your walls, because all he does is listen at 150 dBs. Yeah, so we've got all types in our group, and I'm going to try to feature everybody at some point. But again, and quick anecdotal story. You brought up Brian Cheney and James Bongiorno with the Amzilla and the VMPS. I remember being in a room at Alexis Park, maybe early 2000s. I don't know if you were doing it back then.
I think my first show at the Alexis Park was, I want to say 2009.
Okay. I was in the room, this was well before that, I think in the early 2000s. And I don't know if you remember Romy the Cat. He still has a forum message board, very belligerent guy. He's been kicked off of everything. Hilarious guy. And I was in the VMPS room. It was my first experience listening to VMPS, sitting in the middle. And this guy comes in and just kind of shoos me over to sit in the front, hands the guy, I don't know if it was Cheney or Bongiorno, who it was, an LP to play. This was before streaming and all this. And he had the nerve to tell them to be quiet because they were conducting business in the back because he wanted to listen. And that was my only experience with VMPS. And at the time, I was like, this mother. But I mean, the guy cracks me up. He's just hilarious. But that was my one experience with VMPS. So at some point, I'm going to have to make it down your way and pay you a visit.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But, yeah.
It's Brian started in 2009. He felt the best way to show his speakers was how well do they produce live music. That was his thing. And the way he thought to do that was, well, let's let them hear live music and then immediately hear that live music recorded through the speakers. And that's what I used to do for Brian. He would hire like jazz quintets and stuff. This is much larger rooms starting in 2009, where enough to set up a complete jazz quintet between the speakers. And I would record them. I was using DSD at that time. It was simple 2-track recording, stereo microphone type of thing, very simple. But we would record a song and then immediately play that same song back to the audience. And they would hear immediately the comparison, live versus recorded. The tonal differences, you know, you couldn't really get the sound staging perfect, but it was pretty darn close.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Be
he
a
loved
better
it.
reference than that.
That's a true test. That took guts.
Yeah, no, didn't he also like to play the piano at different stereophile shows? I remember
Yeah, well,
seeing
that was actually James Bongiorno.
James that did that. Okay.
Yeah, he's incredible, a jazz pianist.
Yeah.
Yes, I have several of his recordings.
I remember him in New York at a stereophile show with a piano playing.
Probably with the big yellow hat with the
Yeah,
feather.
very, yeah. He was easy to spot and yeah, quite a
Yeah,
character back in the day. But that just goes to show, I mean, we've got a lot of skin under our belt, a lot of shows under our belt. You know, some people watching may not even have been to a show yet. So it's important to subscribe and watch us talk, and maybe you can get some of our wisdom and, you know, not make some of the mistakes we made, or at least get entertained by some of the mistakes we made.
well, absolutely. And the shows are such a great thing because what other industry can you be a part of where you can go to a show, you can sit down and have lunch with a designer of what it is you own? You know, you
Right.
can't very well do, you often can't do that with your car or other things you're involved with. I mean, these are all the top people of the industry, and you just can, they're right there. They're
No,
just
and
like you and me.
you probably saw my video where I did custom amps with Steve McCormick, and I've got him on a cell phone call, and he's doing preamp and amp for Doug. We called him on a Saturday for
Yeah,
advice with the speakers, and that's a level of high end in the hobby that people overlook. Everybody knows the fancy brands and faceplates and gauges and all this stuff, but really, to me, high end is more about that experience.
it is.
And you know, when you get to know the designers and you can really trust them, and you know, have that experience of modding gear or creating gear, that's a level of high end a lot of people don't factor in or haven't been exposed to yet. So hopefully they'll get some ideas from us as well on that.
I think that personal aspect is very important.
Sure. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing time with us today, and your thoughts and your philosophy definitely should be helpful to anybody watching. We'll definitely come back if you get anything new. Did you have anything on I think you were going to do reel to reel, is that right?
Unfortunately, yeah, that's one of the things I didn't want to like. You know, sometimes you don't want to get too close to something. You're afraid you might like it too much, and then you know what happens after that. And reel to reel is one of those things. I've admired them at the shows, and recently had a chance to listen to some master tapes or copies of master tapes, and it's truly stunning.
Yeah.
You know, to me, I think we talked a little bit about if I prefer digital over vinyl or what I listen to. Each medium has its benefits. You know, digital has that incisive clarity, that low level bass, that impact, that full spectrum of frequency. LP has that analog smoothness and that naturalness that says, this is real music. To me, what tape does, it takes the high side of each of those mediums and puts them together. Mm-hmm. Because the tape is so superior to any LP that's been made from it that I've heard. It's just incredible. But it has that realness that digital sometimes lacks. I still believe digital done right sounds right and is absolutely stunning. But tape, it takes the best of what digital is, mixes it with the best of what LP is, and there it is.
Well, I think it also, people are realizing it depends on what it was mastered in. Mastered digital stuff sounds best on digital equipment,
Right.
and it's amazing, you know. But stuff that's mastered on a tape, you know, it's going to be expensive, but I can see why you would want to go there.
That's the thing. You can get just copies of just about a lot of things you wouldn't think are out there. They're all available, but it's at a price.
Right. So I'll be excited to see that as you progress, and maybe we'll come back soon, and maybe I'll get down there at some point to listen firsthand. So again, just want to thank you for taking the time today. And yeah, everybody should subscribe, sign up for notifications, post any comments. I'm sure Dave and I will be available to answer any questions you may have. Anything else, Dave?
No, it's been a good talk. I've enjoyed it.
Same here. All right, thanks again, and we'll see you guys soon.